A catastrophe in Cairo, killings in Kashmir, and more provocations from Palestine. All that coming up on today's Hot Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, I'm Chuck Holton. Several people have asked me what's happening between India and Pakistan. The media is acting like there's about to be a huge war between the two, and the news is always quick to point out that both India and Pakistan have nuclear missiles, which is true. As if they're about to unleash them on each other, though. I mean, look, that's not going to happen. No state actor is going to employ nuclear missiles in a regional dispute. It'd be like using an M1 Abrams tank to make traffic stops or something. Look, Pakistan and India have been enemies for a long time over that disputed region of Kashmir, which is a really sparsely populated district, beautiful place, by the way. It's claimed by both countries and China since like 1947. Now, the bigger issue right now is that terrorists based in Pakistan have made a habit of crossing over into India and killing people, which tends to annoy one's neighbors, if you can imagine. The 2008 Mumbai terror attack, which killed 166 people in a massive multi-cell coordinated operation, was planned and executed from Pakistan by the terror group Lashkar-e-Taiba. Now, this latest incident involves a suicide attack on Indian paramilitaries, and it happened back on February 14th, killed 20 people, and again, planned and executed from inside Pakistan. India responded by sending warplanes to hit the targets inside Pakistan for the first time since, I think, the 1970s. So now the two countries are trading mortar fire and artillery across that disputed region, which is bad, especially if you live there. But they're not going to start a nuclear war over this. It's just not going to happen. Pakistan shot down one Indian MiG fighter the other day and captured his pilot. They got some airtime parading the bloodied guy around, but now they've agreed to release him as a show of goodwill. So things look like they'll likely soon get back to throwing shade at each other, but not bombs, before too long. At least we can all hope so. A horrible tragedy, on the other hand, in the train station in Cairo, Egypt. That happened Wednesday, when a fight between two conductors caused a train to slam into the station and explode, killing at least 25 people and wounding many more. This is ridiculous. The two conductors got in an argument, so they jumped off the train to fight with each other, and nobody hit the brakes. And pretty graphic footage came out showing the incident. It shows people running around on fire, obviously in shock after what just happened. I only included this today because it's a great lesson to any of you who travel internationally. The most dangerous thing you can do in many parts of the world is use public transportation. Actually, local transportation and buses especially are the worst. But suffice it to say that safety standards are all but non-existent in a lot of places you might go. So if you have a choice between flying or taking the bus, it's always better to spend a little more and fly. Also, if you, for whatever reason, find yourself on fire, remember what we all learned as kids. Stop, drop, and roll. Unfortunately, these poor souls never learned that lesson. Okay, just another quick note real quick from Venezuela. There have been now over 400 defections by members of the armed forces there to the side of interim President Juan Guaido. That's a good start, but at this point, even if thousands were to defect, Russia and Cuba are in charge of the military's top brass there now, and Russia's Wagner group of mercenaries are known for their brutality. They probably have Venezuelan generals by the jewels, so to speak, and so this crisis is likely going to go on much longer than it needs to because of that. The U.S. is continuing to put pressure on that country by ramping up sanctions and even flying reconnaissance aircraft off the coast of Venezuela. But Juan Guaido assured his people after meeting with Vice President Pence on Monday this week that there are no military options on the table at this point. And I believe him on that. Right now, it's all about the media battle space. And I'd say so far, Juan Guaido's winning. So now let's go to Israel. There have been 3 wars between Hamas and Israel since 2008, and it's probably only a matter of time until the next one. Violent protests have been going on for months along the Israel-Gaza border as Palestinians have tried again and again to breach the fence and enter into Israeli territory. You can imagine how bad that would be. When that failed, they began launching incendiary balloons to cross the border and set crops on fire. Classy. And they've caused millions of damages. The IDF has steadfastly defended their frontier, firing on protesters who posed a threat and known terrorists that they identified in the groups of up to 30,000 people protesting at once. So far, almost 170 Palestinians and 1 Israeli have been killed, and thousands have been wounded. Some say up to 17,000 Palestinians have been wounded. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's been a lot. There was a lull for a few weeks as UN negotiators were trying to broker a peace deal, but that fell apart this week, and protesters are back at it. This time they have a new tactic, something they call night confusion units. They come to the border and bang pots and pans in the middle of the night and sing chants and set off sound bombs and send some flaming balloons off. I guess since they failed to breach the fence and murder the Jews living on the other side, they've decided they're just going to annoy them to death. The IDF is taking it seriously, though, and obviously they have to. They've uncovered lots of terror tunnels over the past year, and by some estimates, 80% of the building materials in Gaza are being used to try and construct more. Now, I saw that with my own eyes as the last time I was there in Israel. I visited the Gaza border with Oliver North, and we could see the construction happening right there as they were moving cement and bricks and things like that to the openings of these terror tunnels that they were trying to build across into Israel. Here's a little bit of the footage that we shot while we were there. 15 seconds. That's about all the time you would have to get your children to safety here in the city of Sderot, only about 1 kilometer from the border with Gaza. That's because over 30,000 rockets have been fired at this city since 2001, and it's gotten to the point where there are 1 bomb shelter for every 2.5 people in this city. As a matter of fact, they've even made these playgrounds into bomb shelters. This caterpillar behind me is actually a bomb shelter, camouflaged, and they try to make it a game for the kids so that they can kind of avoid some of the post-traumatic stress issues that come from living under this kind of a threat for your entire life.
This is an Israeli army base not far from the Gaza border. Should something untoward happen, a terror attack, for example, this is what we would call the QRF, the Quick Reaction Force. Their job is to get there and be first with these Merkava tanks built by the Israelis and designed to work in this kind of terrain and against that kind of enemy. We're now going right up to the edge of the border just to make sure that you understand back home how difficult this assignment is for the Israeli army, protecting against terror attacks from the other side of this border.
Yeah, well, it's not occupied on a daily basis.
So, without getting into stuff you can't talk about, there's obviously lots of surveillance on it. I mean, everybody, they can see the aerostat.
Who? The Hamas?
Sure, they know it's there.
Yeah, they can see everything that we can see. They have
Sure.
binoculars, they have night vision, they have
everything.
Yeah, they have everything.
תגיד לו כמה מטר אנחנו מהגדר.
If you can see, we're just maybe 10 meters
Sure.
from the fence. Mm-hmm.
Where's their nearest visible outpost? One of the buildings up above?
There are a few inside the buildings on the top
Sure.
floors, but there are some that you just can show it. I'm looking for it. If you can see, there is a white building
Yes.
over there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is one of the posts, and they have a lot of them all over the fence.
So have these guys gotten any military training from Hezbollah or from the
Yeah, they are training. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
from the Hezbollah or other
well,
organizations, but they are training.
the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Quds Force, we know from what's been going on in Iraq, they're very active with Hezbollah. And it's evident, you can see the training that the Hezbollah fighters now have received, making them much more effective than they were before. I mean, they've got a lot of combat experience now, in both in Syria and in Iraq. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they've got training and experience makes them more dangerous. I'm just wondering if these guys are getting anything like that. There's no evidence that I've seen up north that there's any Hamas fighters in Syria or Iraq. None of them have been captured anyway. Several
Hamas
of them.
is training,
Sure.
but we train more.
No, that's true. And there's no army with better training than you guys have.
Now, looking at the 30-foot concrete barricade erected by Israel to protect their border and seeing the double-layer barbed wire fence in front of that, I realized they've had nearly a 100% success rate at keeping unwanted people from crossing their borders illegally. And these aren't economic migrants looking for jobs. They're hardened terrorists that want to kill Jews. So it got me wondering why we don't see more about the Gaza wall in the news, since it's the perfect example of how walls work and why. Elliot Chodoff is a political and military analyst who specializes in Middle East conflicts and the global war on terror. I went and talked to him while I was there and asked him about the comparison between the U.S. southern border and their frontier with Gaza. Here's some never-before-seen footage of our interview.
The fence works in part because of that context.
The fence works because you've militarized that zone?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
And let's put it this way. No, the fence was built in a militarized zone.
Right.
Okay, we didn't change the status of the zone.
Okay.
In fact, the fence is relatively new, the fence on the Syrian border at least. Up until the regime disintegration, call it whatever you want, our threat up there was massive armor attack. There was no fence. It was a barbed wire line. But when you're expecting armored divisions coming across the border, the fence is not what's going to do the job for you.
Right.
When the regime disintegrated, when the regime was there, they were preventing anything from coming across because they had an issue in keeping the border quiet too. So we had an occasional problem here and there, but it was nothing to speak of. Once the regime began to disintegrate, now we're facing a terrorist threat. There are some 60 terrorist organizations on that border. Okay, and they're all against each other and they're all against us. So it's chaos as far as we're concerned. Now the fence goes in as a block on one level, but I look at it more as a delay/tripwire, in the sense that there is no such thing as an impenetrable obstacle. It doesn't matter whether it's walls, fences, mines. Human beings will figure out a way over, under, or through them, one way or the other, if it's unprotected, uncontrolled, unobserved. So this gives us that additional time. They've got to work to get through it, and that gives us time to respond.
What is the point then of having a border if people are going to find a way to get through it?
Again, it has to be backed by human beings. Now, whether it's military human beings, border control human beings, it doesn't really matter. When the probe hits and begins to work its way through, over, under, through, there's got to be something on your side that's going to come there and respond to it appropriately. And again, if we're talking about illegal immigration, then it's a police issue, border protection issue, whatever. If it's a military border, then it's a military issue.
Have you had any issues with refugees coming across from Syria? You don't have that.
No.
The one place they're not going to go is Israel.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Again, we've made the fence such that it's impenetrable to the average person simply deciding. Refugees are true refugees are much more a path of least resistance kind of movement. Right. And if the Jordanian border is open or the Turkish border is open.
Can you describe to me the nature of the barrier?
It's a heavy fence with minefields, booby traps around it, not accessible. In other words, it's a multiple fence system where the last fence is the major fence, but you can't wander into the danger zone. The fence itself is electronic, not electric, which means that if it's touched, it sends off sensors. And they're very sensitive. The border itself is patrolled by mobile patrols, and it has outposts along it. The Golan border in particular is very easy to observe because it's essentially a plateau with a number of high points. So one high point gives you tremendous vision, visibility, and cameras in addition to that.
How long is that fence?
40 miles.
Pretty interesting, huh? Well, that's it for today. If you're enjoying the news we're putting out, please consider supporting the podcast on patreon.com/hotzone. It's a new way people are getting their news, and with your support, I'm going to be able to keep bringing you the ground truth from the world's hot zones. So I appreciate every one of you, and I'll see you back here on Monday with a great interview about the crisis in Haiti. So be there. We'll be right here on the Hot Zone.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.